The ocean is our planet's greatest keeper of secrets. In its dark, crushing depths lie sunken ships, lost treasures, and countless souls swallowed by the abyss. But what happens when a ship refuses to sink? What happens when, long after its engines have gone silent, it continues its journey on another plane of existence? This is a question that haunts the maritime world, a chilling possibility that blurs the line between history and legend, turning steel and rivets into a vessel for the supernatural, a timeless ark carrying a crew of the departed across an endless, spectral sea. There is such a ship, a magnificent steel lady that was once the pride of an empire. She has carried kings and movie stars, soldiers and civilians through times of unprecedented peace and unimaginable conflict. Her decks have felt the footsteps of the world's most famous figures, and her cabins have housed secrets of the powerful. She was a symbol of human ingenuity and ambition, a floating palace that conquered the vast and formidable Atlantic Ocean, connecting continents and cultures with her powerful engines and unwavering presence. A true titan of her era, celebrated and revered across the globe. But she has also carried death, horrific accidents, unspeakable tragedies, and the quiet, lonely passing of souls far from home have stained her history. Now permanently moored, she is no longer just a ship. She has become a home, a prison, and a floating mausoleum for hundreds of trapped spirits who remain tethered to her decks and corridors. Her transformation from a vessel of transport to a stationary monument has only concentrated the paranormal energy within her hull, creating a vortex of spiritual activity that draws in the curious and the brave, forever changing their perception of the afterlife. We will now leave the solid ground behind and set sail into a sea of fear. We will board the legendary Queen Mary, a vessel whose reputation for being haunted is as grand as her original opulence. We will walk her gilded halls, where the echoes of laughter and music from a bygone era mix with whispers from an unseen world. We will descend into her scorching engine room, a place of immense power and tragic death, and we will peer into her sealed staterooms, cabins so active with malevolent forces they had to be closed off from the living. This is the story of the Queen Mary, a place where the constant sound of the waves lapping against the hull cannot drown out the weeping of the dead. Her history is a tapestry, woven with threads of triumph and tragedy, luxury and loss. Each creak of her aged structure, each flicker of a light in an empty corridor, is a testament to the souls who never left. Prepare yourself, for this voyage is not for the faint of heart. The darkness below the water is infinitely deep, and the stories this ship is dying to tell are truly terrifying. The story of the Queen Mary began as an epic tale of national pride and technological prowess. In the 1930s, the world was in a fierce race to conquer the Atlantic. Nations competed to build the largest, fastest, and most luxurious ocean liners, turning the sea into a grand stage for engineering competition. And Great Britain, with its centuries-old maritime pride on the line, decided to create a masterpiece that would stand unrivaled. A ship that would not just cross the ocean, but dominate it in every conceivable way, securing its place in history. In 1936, the RMS Queen Mary was launched. She was not merely a ship. She was a floating city of immense scale and breathtaking beauty, over 1,000 feet long, taller than the Eiffel Tower if stood on end. She was a true marvel of modern engineering and artistic design. Her sleek lines and powerful presence announced a new era of transatlantic travel, making her an instant icon. The world watched in awe as this colossal vessel took to the water for the first time, a promise of a future where distance was no longer a barrier. Inside, she was a palace of Art Deco splendor, a testament to the glamour and sophistication of the age. Grand ballrooms with soaring ceilings, 5-star restaurants serving the finest cuisine, and staterooms paneled in dozens of rare and exotic woods, created an atmosphere of unparalleled luxury. She even had a synagogue, catering to every need of her diverse and wealthy passengers. She was the absolute pinnacle of opulence, a floating playground designed exclusively for the fabulously rich and famous, a world unto herself, where every desire could be met with impeccable style and service. The most famous personalities of the era graced her decks: Winston Churchill, Clark Gable, Fred Astaire, and countless other luminaries walked these very corridors, sipping champagne and dancing beneath enormous crystal chandeliers. In her golden years, the Queen Mary was a vibrant symbol of progress and hope. Her majestic horn boomed across harbors from Southampton to New York, a powerful and resonant promise of adventure, luxury, and a newly connected world. She was more than a ship. She was a cultural phenomenon, a moving landmark recognized and admired by all who saw her. But then, the deep and ominous shadows of war fell across the globe, and the world changed forever. In 1939, with the outbreak of World War II, the Queen Mary's life of luxury came to an abrupt end. She was officially conscripted into military service, her purpose shifting from pleasure to the grim necessities of war. Her glamorous black, white, and red hull, a symbol of peacetime elegance, was painted over with a grim, camouflaging battleship gray, erasing her identity and preparing her for the dangerous duties that lay ahead on the hostile seas. The transformation was total and brutal. The luxurious furniture that had once defined her interiors was unceremoniously stripped out and placed in storage. The expensive, plush carpets were torn up from the floors, revealing the cold steel beneath. Her magnificent swimming pools and grand ballrooms were converted into massive, tiered dormitories, with bunks stacked high to maximize capacity. The ship that once carried a comfortable 2,000 passengers in supreme luxury was now crammed with up to 16,000 soldiers, turning the palace into a Spartan and crowded barracks for the machinery of war. She was no longer the Queen Mary. Among the troops and naval commanders, she became known by a new, more fitting name, the Grey Ghost. This evocative nickname came from her astonishing speed, a critical asset in the war-torn Atlantic. She was so fast that she could consistently outrun the deadly Nazi U-boats that preyed on slower vessels. Because of this incredible capability, she often traveled without a single naval escort, a lone giant hurtling through the perilous, submarine-infested waters, relying on her speed alone to deliver her precious human cargo safely. She zigzagged constantly across the dangerous ocean, a silent and deadly transport carrying hundreds of thousands of Allied troops to the front lines of the European theater. Her role in the war was crucial, significantly shortening the conflict by rapidly deploying vast numbers of soldiers. But it was in her heroic role as a war hero that the Queen Mary suffered her greatest, most haunting tragedy. An an incident so horrific that it would forever scar her soul and redefine her legacy, turning her from a savior of men into a vessel haunted by the ghosts of those she inadvertently destroyed. On the fateful day of October 2nd, 1942, off the coast of Ireland, the Grey Ghost was performing its standard defensive zigzag maneuver to avoid potential U-boat attacks. Accompanying her on this voyage was an old light cruiser, the HMS Curacoa, tasked with providing anti-aircraft support due to a fatal miscalculation in navigation and timing. The colossal 81,000-ton Queen Mary plowed directly into the much smaller Curacoa, an event of unimaginable violence and immediate destruction that unfolded in the cold waters of the North Atlantic. Imagine the sound of that impact, the sickening, high-pitched shriek of tearing metal as the massive bow of the liner met the thin hull of the cruiser, the deafening roar of engines, and the horrific, desperate screams of hundreds of men who knew their fate was sealed in that split second. The Queen Mary, with its immense weight and momentum, acted like a hot knife through butter, slicing the HMS Curacoa completely in two. The two halves of the smaller ship were instantly swamped by the sea, a catastrophic end to a vessel and its crew. The escort ship sank in a matter of mere minutes, a horrifyingly swift descent into the abyss. It dragged more than 300 sailors down with it into the cold, dark sea. A mass casualty event caused not by enemy action, but by a tragic, friendly accident. And here is the most horrific part of the story, a detail that elevates it from a tragedy to a truly haunting tale. Due to strict wartime orders to never stop for any reason, lest she become a sitting duck for U-boats, the Queen Mary was given a brutal and unforgiving command. The command was simple and absolute: do not stop. Knowing they had just caused a catastrophe of epic proportions, and fully aware that hundreds of men were drowning and dying in their wake, the crew of the Grey Ghost had to steam ahead at full speed. They were forced to abandon their comrades to a certain watery grave, listening to their cries fade into the distance. This act of perceived betrayal, though a military necessity, would become the ship's most profound and enduring wound, a source of guilt that would fester for decades. Many believe that in that moment of cold, calculated necessity, the very soul of the Queen Mary changed forever. The crushing guilt, the unimaginable trauma, and the violent, sudden deaths of hundreds of souls latched onto the ship itself, imprinting their final moments of terror onto its steel structure. Unable to move on, they became her eternal passengers, a spectral crew bound to the vessel that had led them to their doom. The ship was no longer just a machine of war. It had become a repository for immense suffering and spiritual unrest. To this day, long after the war ended, crew members and visitors on the now moored ship report chilling and unexplainable phenomena. They hear phantom screams, the horrifying sound of crashing and twisting metal, and the desperate cries for help coming from the port side of the ship. The exact point where the collision occurred. They sometimes see the apparitions of wet, desperate men, their spectral forms attempting to climb the side of the hull in a futile effort to escape the icy water before vanishing completely into thin air, replaying their final moments forever. The tragedy of the HMS Curacoa was not just a dark chapter in the Queen Mary's storied history. For many paranormal researchers and believers, it was a profound wound that never healed, a cataclysmic event that ripped open a doorway to the spirit world. This paranormal gateway turned the Queen Mary from a celebrated ship into a permanently haunted vessel, a place where the veil between the world of the living and the dead is terrifyingly thin. And the echoes of that terrible day in 1942 continue to reverberate through her haunted corridors. When the Queen Mary was finally retired from service and sailed to her final port in Long Beach, California, in 1967, she was converted into a floating hotel and museum. Many thought her spirits might finally find peace with her journey's end. On the contrary, once her massive engines fell silent for the last time, their whispers and actions only grew louder and more pronounced. It seemed the stillness of her permanent mooring only served to agitate the souls trapped within her, making their presence felt more strongly than ever before. The ship is a veritable labyrinth of paranormal hotspots, a massive floating complex where nearly every deck and corridor has its own ghost stories. Each specific area has its own unique tales, its own resident ghosts, and its own brand of terrifying activity. From the deepest parts of the hull to the most luxurious suites on the upper decks. The Queen Mary is saturated with spiritual energy, making it one of the most concentrated locations for paranormal phenomena in the entire world. A city of ghosts with a population that never checks out. Deep in the bowels of the ship, where its colossal steel heart once beat with ferocious power, lies one of its most terrifying locations, the engine room. This area is a hot, claustrophobic maze of pipes, massive machinery, and narrow gangways. And there you will find the infamous watertight Door 13. During a routine safety drill in the ship's past, an 18-year-old crewman named John Petter was tragically crushed to death by this multi-ton steel door as it closed. A horrific accident that sealed his spirit to this very spot. His spirit is believed to be forever trapped here, endlessly wandering the place of his demise. A figure of a young man in grimy overalls is often seen walking the gangways of the engine room. His face, reportedly, a mask of deep sorrow and confusion. Visitors and staff report feeling watched, touched, or hearing disembodied whispers. Greasy handprints mysteriously appear on freshly painted surfaces, and the sharp sound of clanging metal echoes from the empty, silent chambers. A constant reminder of the young life that was violently extinguished in this industrial tomb. The now empty first and second class swimming pools are another area of intense paranormal activity. A playground for the departed, the first class pool, with its stunning and preserved Art Deco tilework, is where people frequently report seeing the apparitions of women dressed in 1930s style bathing suits. Spectral figures from the ship's glamorous past who appear for a moment before fading away. The sound of splashing is sometimes heard from the bone-dry pool, a chilling auditory remnant of a time long since past, echoing through the empty, tiled space. Wet footprints will often appear from nowhere on the dry tile floor, leading from the edge of the empty pool towards the changing rooms. And then they will simply stop, as if the person who made them vanished into another dimension. But the second-class pool holds a deeper and more specific sadness. It is associated with at least one confirmed drowning. The spirit of a little girl, affectionately nicknamed Jackie by paranormal investigators, is said to haunt the area. Her playful yet unsettling energy felt by many who venture near the pool. Visitors and staff often hear a child's distinct giggling echoing in the silence, or a small, clear voice asking an unseen companion, "Can we play?" Her presence is a sad reminder of the many lives, both long and short, that were lived and lost within the confines of this ship. These innocent but ghostly encounters serve as one of the most poignant and creepy experiences that one can have while exploring the haunted swimming pools, a place where joy and tragedy are eternally intertwined in the supernatural fabric of the vessel. Stateroom B340 is arguably the most notoriously haunted cabin on the entire ship. The paranormal activity within its walls became so frequent and intense over the years that the hotel management was forced to strip the room of all its furnishings and seal it from the public for many years. It was only recently reopened for the bravest of guests, those who stayed there before its closure reported a terrifying litany of horrors that made a peaceful night's sleep absolutely impossible, driving many to flee in the middle of the night. Guests reported lights and faucets turning on and off by themselves with alarming frequency. The most common and frightening report was of the bedsheets being violently ripped off them as they slept, thrown to the floor by an unseen and aggressive force. They would hear violent, angry knocking from the outside of the cabin door, only to open it and find a completely empty hallway. A man's deep, guttural growling voice is often heard in the room, and many have felt a dark, oppressive presence watching their every move. The Queen's Salon, which once served as the first-class grand ballroom, was the site of the ship's most glamorous parties and celebrations during its golden age. Today, it serves as the stage for a solitary, ethereal dancer, the ghost of a beautiful young woman in a flowing white evening gown is often seen dancing alone in the profound silence of the vast, empty ballroom. Her graceful, silent movements are a hauntingly beautiful and melancholic sight, a spectral performance for an audience that is no longer there, forever lost in her final dance. Perhaps nothing is more universally unsettling than the sound of a suffering child. The ship's nursery is another hotspot where staff and visitors frequently hear the phantom cries of an infant. The origin of this particular spirit is unknown, lost to the ship's long and complex history, but its heartbreaking wails have haunted countless people over the decades. A deeply disturbing sound that echoes through the quiet corridors. These specific, well-documented spirits are just the beginning of the ship's paranormal population, a mere fraction of the whole. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of other spirits believed to still be on board the Queen Mary. The souls of soldiers who died from wounds or sickness during the war, passengers who passed from natural causes during a voyage, and crewmen who perished in tragic accidents, all contribute to the spectral census. They are the permanent residents of this floating city, their stories and energies forever fused with the iron and wood of the vessel. They can never leave, creating a complex and layered haunting unlike any other. When the Queen Mary arrived in Long Beach, many thought her long journey was over, and that the spirits she carried would finally find peace. The exact opposite happened. It seems that the ship's ceasing to move, the end of her travels across the sea, only made the spirits more restless and prominent. They had no more journeys to take, no more destinations to look forward to. They were finally and permanently trapped in their steel prison, their only outlet being to interact with the living who now walked their decks daily. Paranormal activity on the ship has reportedly increased dramatically since it became a major tourist attraction. Investigators and psychics have theories as to why this might be, as the constant presence of millions of living people, with all their energy and emotion, stirred up the dormant energy of the dead. Or are the spirits simply trying to communicate more urgently, to tell their tragic stories to a new generation that is finally willing to listen to them after so many years of being ignored or disbelieved? Dozens of paranormal investigation teams, including those from famous television shows like Ghost Hunters, have visited the Queen Mary, and almost all have left with what they claim is compelling evidence of the afterlife. They have recorded clear, disembodied voices on digital recorders, captured full-body apparitions on thermal and infrared cameras, and filmed objects like doors and chairs moving on their own. The sheer volume of evidence has led Time magazine to name the Queen Mary one of the top 10 most haunted places in America. The staff who work on the ship every day, from the housekeepers cleaning the staterooms to the engineers maintaining the old machinery. All have their own personal stories of strange encounters. Over time, they have learned to live and work alongside their invisible colleagues. They respect the spirit's known territories, consciously avoid certain particularly active areas at night, and sometimes they even quietly greet the phantoms as they pass by in the hallways, a sign of respect and coexistence between the living and the dead. So the ultimate question remains: why is the Queen Mary so intensely haunted? Is it the crushing, unresolved guilt from the HMS Curacoa tragedy, a deep wound in the ship's history that never healed and has since attracted other suffering souls to it? Is it simply the natural accumulation of countless individual tragedies, the accidents, the natural deaths, the broken hearts, and the suicides that occurred over its long and eventful life at sea, creating layers upon layers of residual spiritual energy? Or is there another, more terrifying theory? Did the ship itself, a colossal steel entity that witnessed so much of human history, develop a form of consciousness of its own? A soul forged by the journeys it took, the vast oceans it crossed, and the millions of lives it carried within its hull. Is it possible that the ship itself became a collector, a sentient ark that purposefully gathers and keeps the souls of those who die within it? We will likely never know the definitive answer for sure, but one thing is absolutely undeniable. The Queen Mary is not just a museum or a hotel. It is a time capsule, a tangible bridge between our world and another, unseen reality. She sits there, silent and majestic in the Long Beach harbor, her weathered steel shell filled with the endless whispers of history and the undeniable presence of the dead. She is no longer the gray ghost of the war. She has fully embraced her new identity. She is a true ghost ship in every sense of the word, and she is waiting. She is waiting for the next passengers, those brave enough to step aboard, to walk her haunted decks, and to listen to the story the ocean, through her, wants to tell. Thank you for taking this haunting voyage. Which of the Queen Mary's spirits do you find the most terrifying? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you are fascinated by dark history and supernatural mysteries, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for our next adventure into the world of the unexplained.